away we go. Welcome to the newest episode of Deals and Deadlines with Hadley Engelhardt. He's our super agent, our sports business insider. I'm Matt Chernoff. Thanks for joining us. If you're new around here, let me explain what's going to happen. We're going to talk about all things sports business. You can subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your favorite podcast. We drop new episodes each and every Wednesday, so we'd love for you guys to be a part of that. Or you can watch us like you are now if you are on the 680 The Fan YouTube channel. All right, Hadley, we put the college football season to bed earlier this week with the Indiana win over Miami 27-21. But let's talk about the business and the money side of things. Curt Cignetti has taken the Indiana program for the absolute bottom to the absolute top, and it's going to pay big. A couple of years ago, Cignetti, when he was at James Madison, was making just under $430,000 a year. Not a bad living. 2 years later, he's making nearly $12 million a year, and because he just won the championship, with all of his bonuses, including a $2 million bonus for winning the title, his total compensation is just under $15 million with a renegotiation clause putting him in the top three of all of college football. You know when they negotiated that, that was never in their thinking.
100%. I mean, they felt like, hey, listen, if we can win some games, great. We're making him one of the higher paid coaches, which he deserved going into this year. Never thought that this would happen. By the way, they are thrilled to renegotiate this contract. As you've seen, Mark Cuban and other alumni are jumping on the ship to go ahead and say, let's continue to fund this, and we'll talk more about that, I'm sure. But, great for Curt. Listen, he deserves it. I think any coach that wins the national championship deserves to be one of the highest paid, right? That's the ultimate pinnacle of coaching. But he proved there's a way to do this in this NIL world, and they won. And the question's going to be is this the future of Indiana and college football, or was this the perfect storm? And those are the questions that have to be answered.
It's a great question, but I think it does make everybody else realize, well, in this new world order of college football with NIL and transfer portal, it does open up avenues for schools that never would have had them in years past. So let's talk about the demand for the game. We don't have the TV ratings yet. We'll wait on that. We do know this much. It was one of the highest priced tickets we were going to find on the secondary market. Tickets at kickoff were still going for nearly $4,000 a piece, with some of the nicest seats where Hadley would end up sitting, down real close with access to bars and everywhere. $50,000 in some cases for tickets. This is the perfect storm, right? Indiana's never been there. Game was played in the home stadium, Miami. I don't know that we'll ever see that again.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this was a win-win for college sports. It was the advertising dollars were through the roof. Ticket prices were through the roof. I know so many people that went to the game, and I kind of told them, 5-6 days ago, don't worry about it. They're always high. They'll go down before kickoff. And I'm getting calls and texts the morning of 3-4 hours before kickoff going, Hadley, what's going on? I go, hey, I'm telling you now, I don't know what's going on, because traditionally speaking, you would agree.
Sure.
Ticket prices go down. I went to the Final Four last year, and I didn't have my tickets until the end, and no problem, got seats I wanted, and saved a few dollars by waiting. Crazy stuff. And the amount of money that people paid, you're right. This was a UM. Although the majority of people there said it was mostly Indiana people.
It looked like it.
It was probably a 60-40 split. Indiana people were getting out of the Midwest weather, headed down to Florida. It was a beautiful day. It was the perfect storm to bring people down there, and obviously Indiana winning it, made it worthwhile for everybody. So well worth it. And again, ticket price to the roof. Is this the norm? Will this happen again next year in Vegas? I don't know.
Well, Vegas can always bring out those who aren't even tied to the game.
Correct.
Right. So it's a different deal there. Okay, you mentioned ad revenue. Since the beginning of the bowl season, the postseason, these postseason telecasts have generated nearly $250 million in ad spend, led by the big sponsors, Allstate, Dr. Pepper, Taco Bell. Since the bowl season began December 13th, there have been 1,481 total brands featured throughout all the college football postseason telecasts, nearly 15,000 commercials, which means what? We'll do more. We get more games, so we can have more ad revenue.
Yeah, listen, it's now become college football playoffs is now the Super Bowl of revenues and commercials. We've talked about how obviously the NFL is the Goliath, right, when it comes to revenue and viewership. College football playoffs is proving that it is a revenue stream, and it's amazing. And again, I know you're leading into, again, more games. Does that mean more revenue? And that'll be part of the ultimate equation on how they decide this.
Well, but let's be clear. This is the college football postseason. So this is the Alamo Bowl. This is the Tony the Tiger Bowl. It's all the bowls that we say, why do we need this many bowls? Well, two reasons. TV loves the inventory, because even if these games don't do big numbers, it's more than what ESPN or these networks would get for these telecasts that they start the bowl season in mid to late December. And as we just told you, they can sell them. They might not do great numbers at the ticket window, but they do good enough numbers on TV that we talk about having too many bowls. They're always going to look to add more.
Yeah, listen, I mean, the joke is amongst people in our world, you turn on the TV sometimes, you see pillow fighting. I mean, they're trying cornhole championships. So they're trying to fill up space. Well, to have colleges playing football in whatever bowl game it is, even though it's meaningless, going back, most of the bowls were meaningless anyway, right? Other than the 2 or 3 that were the elite bowl games. So it just shows you that everybody loves sports. And again, I think if you peel the onion and peel it, why their stuff is up is because it's gambling. It allows people to gamble. And that may change, obviously, if they change prop betting, but that people are more into it. I talk to people all the time, and they're talking about, yeah, I've got money on this, I got money on that. I got things that they never bet on before. Now they're doing more of it.
Well, you're more invested. There's no question. Okay, so now we're talking about the expansion of the college football playoff. The committee met this week to talk about keeping it at 12, going to 16, or in some cases even looking at 24 teams. Chris Lowe said the SEC's preference is to go to 16 if they're going to expand at all. The Big Ten pushed for 24 teams, which the SEC pushed back and said, we'll stay at 12 rather than going to 24. We all know these negotiations, you better than I. There's always a give and take in this. The Big 10 wants 24. The SEC's threatening to stay at 12. All right, well, let's meet in the middle at 16 because, again, a couple of more playoff games, more revenue, more ability to have full stadiums. So that, to me, if I'm guessing how this goes, Hadley, I think we are at 16. I think it happens next year.
I think I agree with you. And I don't know if it's next year, but if it's not next year, it's the year after. But I think that's the SEC, holding the power that they hold. And if you go to 24, what ends up happening is you lose the conference championship games. And so the SEC does not want to relinquish the SEC championship game for several reasons. One, it helps determine the champion that they fight for. And more importantly, it brings the SEC a lot of money.
Well, Dr. Pepper's the title sponsor, a huge moneymaker.
So I think for that reason, and that I agree with you, I think when you negotiate, they want certain things. The Big Ten and all of them want 16 short-term, eventually agree to 24. They're saying, no, we're staying at 12. What does that mean? They're probably going to agree on 16. Whether it's in 27, I don't know, but it will be, in the future.
So I always think of it this way. Once these numbers get floated, we'll get there eventually. You look at every sport. Major League Baseball used to have one team in the NL, one in the AL. They went to the World Series. Now we're up to 14 playoff teams. The NBA has 16 playoff teams, and now we have 2 more from each conference that are play-ins. So we have an extra round of games. You could do it there. Same thing happened in the NHL when they expanded their playoffs. College basketball at one point had 16 teams in the NCAA tournament. Now we're up to 64, 68, with the promise of 72. So it doesn't stop. They might be at 16 for a while. They'll look to keep going.
Yeah, again, I think, the answer is not how many playoffs or all that stuff. Now, the other thing that people have to take into consideration, this goes with the portal as well, is we have to look at the academic calendar as well. Again, these athletes, even though they're big, I know.
Academics, Hadley.
I talked to a general manager from a power SEC school this morning, and we joked about that nobody in any negotiations, anybody talks about academics and when classes begin and when classes end and, finals or whatever it may be. It's like we totally forgot that these are student athletes. All we talk about is money, money, money.
Okay, with that in mind, the calendar is being discussed for college football. It's one of the big discussion points. Whether we're going to move the transfer portal window, whether we're going to have spring practice moving. And again, I think college football's goals, and you're funny because you bring up academics and they never bring up academics. How can we move the transfer portal window where these teams who are battling in the midst of a playoff aren't focused on trying to find out how many kids are leaving? Like the days after the college football national championship, you heard Curt Cignetti, he's like, I got to get back to work working on transfer portal kids right away. Fernando Mendoza's little brother, Alberto Mendoza, in the transfer portal the day after they win the championship with rumors of maybe him going to Georgia Tech. So if they're going to talk about changing the dates, I saw Nick Saban recommend the idea of putting it somewhere in April, giving teams and coaches a chance to get their ducks in a row. Then you have spring practice after that, almost like the NFL schedule, sort of 8 OTAs in May and push it back that way.
Yeah, I've talked to people about this, both coaches and general managers. And here's what I suggest, which is similar to what Nick Saban says. Again, these are student athletes, so let's not forget this. Doing it after the calendar year, the semester ends. Let that be the portal period. So during the summer, they can do that. And instead of having spring practice, you have, like they have in the pros, you have a May or late April time where you can practice with your new roster that you've put together. That way we don't forget about it. Because what happens is when you transfer now, the portal's only in January. When you transfer mid-semester, today I was negotiating a contract for a player in a Power Conference, and classes began yesterday, and he's not in school yet. So again, you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, and we're losing focus on that. Let's make it easier for everybody. Do it after the academic year. So in late April, early May, you have a practice period then anyway, because kids are on campus anyway. And that way, nobody misses any school. It's easier to transfer, and nobody's worrying about the transfer portal while the season's going on.
Okay, with that in mind, the playoff schedule is also going to look different next year. The College Football National Championship game won't be played until January 25th, which pushes everything back. Quarterfinals still on January 1st, but there will be 2 weeks between the quarters and the semis, or between the semis and the title game, depending on how they schedule that. The other thing you want to think about when it comes to that, for those who, I mean, I guess everybody mostly has cable these days, but for the next 7 or 8 years, you're going to get a simulcast on ABC and ESPN of the title game. So for those who still just get things over the air, at least that part of you will be able to see the game, but you're going to have to wait a week later.
Yeah, first of all, I think that's a mistake by having this. I think people want this playoff system to go every week, and having this delay. Now you're trying to be like the NFL, was when we had that bye week between the championship and the Super Bowl. I think that's a mistake that colleges may make. But again, they're spreading it out that way, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I think you're playing with fire when you do that, because I think people, it's too much. And again, when you delay it, it's sort of like a 7-game first round in the NBA, even though it's 5 games, but it's just too much.
Right.
And so I think people lose interest. So it'll be interesting to see how people feel about that.
All right, a couple of things I want to pick your brain about. So we have general managers now as a very common occurrence in college football, to help run your organization like you would a professional organization. Well, Indiana doesn't have one. Georgia, we know here locally, doesn't have one. Curt Cignetti and Kirby Smart have been clear about they want to be where the buck stops. Doesn't mean the athletic director doesn't get involved, but in certain cases, the head coach of the football program becomes the most powerful. Talk to me about the logistics, because I know you've talked to people about this. For those who have a GM now running these college programs, what is the difference for those who don't have one?
Yeah, let's be clear. The New England Patriots don't have a general manager, haven't had one for many years. But they have a director of scouting, of development, and of personnel. So there are people running it along with the head coach. So don't let Cignetti think he's doing it all by himself. I mean, I'm sure he's doing the lion's share of things, but he has people in place vetting the process, finding prospects, negotiating. He's not involved in those things, but he's keeping that title. Kirby does the same thing, but he has a team around him that works with it. But you need that team in place because, again, it is a process. It's a Wild West. There's no cap. All we have is a small window to find these guys in the portal, and, there's no commitment. I mean, once you commit, guys are still negotiating with other teams. So it is still the Wild West. Again, we'll see if the Indiana way is the way of the future or it's a anomaly this year.
All right, one more story. So with the transfer portal, again, being such a big discussion, I saw where Josh Pate said many players who have been entering the portal but not finding a new place to play want to return to their former school just to be rejected. Coaches have filled roster spots. They've been in the portal themselves doing other things. 30% of kids will never find a school to transfer to and have to drop down a division. In some cases, Division II, not being able to return to their school. Is that a way a coach is using it sort of as leverage to say, all right, put yourself in, but you don't necessarily have a spot waiting when you come back out?
They do have that meeting. I mean, listen, the portal isn't free agency. It's musical chairs now. And, when you enter the portal, you're always at risk of, obviously, a lot of coaches say once you enter the portal, you're not welcome back here at all. And that happens, and I've seen it happen firsthand. But again, that's why agents kind of talk to people off the record to kind of gauge the interest. We're seeing players that weren't in the portal yet have $6.5, $4.5, $5 million offers. Well, how does that happen if you're not in the portal? So it goes to show you that things are still happening under the table, discussions are happening, and the higher profile players are having these discussions. You talk about Mendoza. I mean, the game ended 2 hours ago, and he's already thinking about going to Georgia Tech. Why? Those conversations have already happened. But when you do enter the portal, I've seen it happen firsthand, where players think their value is this, and they go into the portal and find out, woo, it's not it. They're making significantly less, or in some cases, have to go to a lower level of football to find a home potentially reestablish themselves and then re-enter the portal on a high note.
I think I saw the number was 3,500 players in the portal. So yes, musical chairs is a great way to describe it. All right, coming up, we have a musical chairs going on in the NFL. It's the coaching carousel. We have jobs that have been filled, still a lot open, but big names on the market. We'll talk about those next. All right, we continue with this episode of Deals and Deadlines with Hadley. I'm Matt. Remember, you can subscribe to this pod and you'll get it whenever our new episodes drop each and every Wednesday. You can also watch us anytime on our 680 The Fan YouTube channel. All right, Hadley, it is that time where the coaching carousel is spinning like it's never spun before. When it was all said and done, we had 10 openings in the NFL, which tied a record that's happened only a couple of other times. And these are not just your typical Falcons, Browns, bad teams. We've got some award winners
Putting
here.
Atlanta in that group.
When you don't go to the playoffs for 8 years in a row, you fit that bill. But we have teams like the Steelers who have finally made a change. The Ravens, we know, with John Harbaugh moving on from him. And most recently, Buffalo opened up with McDermott being fired after they lost in the playoffs. So let's talk about all the moving parts that go into this, right? I know teams like the Falcons, we'll start there. They nabbed their head coach, Kevin Stefanski, over the weekend. Some thought, well, why are you going so early? And their thinking was, well, Stefanski's got a second interview scheduled in Tennessee, in Miami, and in Baltimore. If we really like him, we don't want to take the chance of him going to those buildings and finding a new job. How much in the way of leverage is going on? Are agents involved in any level of, hey, you might want to talk to him and get this done now because he has other meetings, or are they out of it?
No, we just sit there very quietly and let it all happen. No, agents are always working the process at all times. And I think Atlanta, for example, was very smart. If they had their eyes on Stefanski, smart move because he had other interviews. And if this is your guy, you go get him. You don't play this game. You try to negotiate, try to save a few dollars here and there. If he's the guy you want, you go get him. Now, obviously, they've got to go through the general manager stuff and all that kind of stuff as well. So, and who knew that a Sean McDermott would be on the market? And so that would have added to the whole process. So I think people are, trying to get the right coach or the right personnel person, if that's the case. But, all of a sudden new names are being added to it. And now what do you do? What does Buffalo do now? You get rid of a Sean McDermott, great, but who are you replacing him with? If Stefanski was the guy you wanted, or this guy was the guy you wanted, or Harbaugh was potentially the guy you were targeting, they're off the market now. So again, it becomes part of that process, and agents are involved in helping to navigate this, especially when you have a hot client.
Okay, so based on GMs you've talked to, or people who make these hires, even team owners, presidents, do you think it becomes a little bit of like, oh, I didn't realize that team was going to make a change. Maybe it's time for us to make a change. Or I would think it would go the other way. This was described as not a great coaching cycle. Okay, that happens until John Harbaugh is available. And now Sean McDermott's available. So we have some surprises available where maybe I don't make a change and hold on until next year, but it doesn't seem anybody's doing that.
Yeah, but again, when people say it's not a good coaching cycle, I mean, who's to say? Obviously, there's a number of these guys who are getting a second opportunity, and history proves guys who have had a second opportunity have done well. So, when people say that, I don't like that's a tag that they put on it. But, when you add this, but that's why agents are always involved, because they kind of have their ear to what's going on, and they're letting teams know, hey, this is what I'm hearing. We do it with players, too, all across all sports. Hey, I'm hearing about my client this or that. Same thing with coaches. So everybody's kind of a heads up. So as they're putting their board together, they either put a name up there or they pencil a name down low as a potential target. And so we do this all the time. And it's not a leverage thing of money. It's to put your clients in the best case scenario to make them prepared. And, I don't know if it's surprising that McDermott, I mean, you got guys that were minutes away from advancing to the playoffs, both Harbaugh and Sean, and all of a sudden they're out of a job.
Well, it's Mike Tomlin in the playoffs and also the same way.
Yeah, so, and he's someone also, right? Is he really, it sounds like he's really just going to go into broadcasting, at least short term. Does it become long term to be determined?
Which he'll make a boatload of money doing TV. And
totally.
Then, So here's the number, by the way. 10 changes in this cycle. It's the most since 2022. It happened in 1978, 1997, and 2006. But the other thing I find interesting is we're not treating GMs the way we treated the cycle of GMs before. In other words, John Harbaugh gets the job, and I know he's an exception. Gets the job with the Giants, makes it very clear, I'm not reporting to Joe Schoen, the GM. I'm only reporting to the Mara family and the Tisch family and the owners. So Joe Schoen sits out the negotiation, says, fine, Doesn't that sort of, like, you're putting the team together, but your power has been usurped? In Atlanta, they hired Kevin Stefanski well before they're going to hire the GM, so it seems like those two jobs are on the same level. There's no more I'm your boss kind of thing.
Correct. The general manager in a lot of cases is no longer the true GM in that sense. They're running the football side of things. The coach is running on the field. Everybody's reporting to the team president or to the owner. And that's not the way the better teams are built. You want someone that oversees it. You know, it's funny, talking about Atlanta, you know, we just put Matt Ryan in this position to be the president, now the face of the franchise. And all the quotes from Stefanski were from Arthur Blank, and not letting Matt Ryan do his job as president about why we hired Kevin Stefanski. So again, owners are always going to be owners.
Yep.
And we used the Giants, for example. I think that general manager is in a position that if things don't go well or Harbaugh doesn't like what's going on, even if he's doing a terrible job, the GM's out.
Agreed.
And so, you know, you want the GM to be part of it. Even a GM here, a GM in Atlanta comes here. He didn't hire this coach. So that person's going to be in an awkward position. I think that GM is going to be more of a personnel director
Correct.
with a GM title.
Agreed. So the funniest part of the Arthur Blank and the Falcons situation was we heard that Arthur had a big dinner at the house with Stefanski and a bunch of other personnel, including Matt Ryan. They were going to have a steak and potato bar. But no, Mr. Blank threw the apron on, jumped on the grill, and made some T-bones. He just got on there and he did it, which closed the deal. So yes, Arthur Blank, like a lot of other owners, it's hard for them to pull themselves out of it.
Right. And even when you bring someone in as a president, and in Matt Ryan's case is to be the face of the franchise moving forward, handling all the interviews, you know, Arthur still is the owner. Obviously, he dictates all that. But, you know, there are a lot of owners out there that kind of step back. You know, it's interesting, we'll talk about the Bills. They fire the coach, McDermott. There's questions about Brandon Beane and the players he's drafted, some of the receivers in free agency that have failed. He just got promoted.
He did.
You know, so it's a crazy thing how sometimes, because those people have the ear of the owner much more than an actual coach does.
It really seems like in a lot of cases, the guy wearing the suit is given a lot more respect than the guy who's wearing the pullover who's on the sideline. Not to say all owners dismiss the importance of a coach, but we've seen this happen a lot. Brandon Beane's a great example. Go look at their draft picks, and it's nothing that kind of blows you away. But not only do they fire McDermott, they say to Brandon Beane, you're getting a more important position. It's weird.
Well, same thing happened here in Atlanta with Rich McKay.
That's what I mean.
Right? Rich McKay was running the football side, didn't go well, got promoted, was in charge of the stadium, went $1 billion over budget, got promoted. So again, it's an amazing thing that, you know, people are able to continue their jobs, get promoted when their job at hand isn't doing what it's supposed to be.
Okay, so we've talked about both the TV ratings for the NFL, especially in the playoffs, that have been outrageous, and the gambling aspect of it and how important it is. I wanted to mention to you one gambler. This comes from BetMGM.
I thought it was you, by the way, kind of on the down low.
My unit is not this big. He bet $150,000 on Seahawks futures in August. And the total takeaway would have been $4.5 million. So in August, he bet $50,000 on the Seahawks to win the Super Bowl at 60-1. That pays $3 million. He paid gambled $50,000 on Seattle to win the NFC at 28-1. That's $1.4 million. He's already cashed his $50,000 bet on the Seahawks to make the playoffs, so that's nearly $100K. If they win Sunday, he cashes $1.4 million. If they win the Super Bowl, he'll take home $4.5 million.
Yeah, the sharpest guy in Seattle isn't the general manager. It's this guy. I mean, he truly, smart betting. I don't know what resource he used, but he's made some of his bets back, so he's almost at a break-even point because of how he's advanced so far. I'm rooting for them now. I would love this guy or girl. I don't know if they've announced who it is.
We don't know, yes.
But pretty cool that somebody did this.
Here's what's going to happen. If the Seahawks win Sunday, BetMGM will come to him with a lower offer. This is what casinos will do in lower sports books. All right, we know you can take home another $3 million. What if we cash you out at $750,000? Then you say, well, I'm guaranteed this money, or do I want to let it ride and go try to play for the...
Well, knowing he's bet all this money, or she bet all this money, I would think they're going to let it ride, unless the $3 million payout was $2 million. All right, I'll take $2 million and I'll walk.
The other thing you can do is hedge. You can go on the other side and guarantee yourself $1 million or $2 million, however you want to do it. So they're in the catbird seat. All right, coming up, we'll talk about Major League Baseball having another huge contract, and shocking, it's the LA Dodgers. How does that affect the sport? We'll talk about it next. We continue with this edition of Deals and Deadlines with Hadley Engelhardt. I'm Matt Chernoff. Thanks so much for being a part of the show. Remember, new episodes drop each and every Wednesday, meaning if you subscribe, you'll get this on any podcast platform each and every Wednesday morning. Also, you can watch us on our 680 The Fan YouTube channel. Let's talk about the business of baseball, which, until we get to a strike or a lockout, it seems to be pretty good. Last week, we got the news that Kyle Tucker has signed a deal with the Dodgers, 4 years, worth a total of $240 million. Now, there are some numbers we have to talk about. $64 million signing bonus, which baseball had not always been big with the signing bonuses. Opt-outs after year 2 and 3 of Kyle Tucker's deal. $30 million deferred, and it's a $57.1 million a year in net present value if you factor in deferrals, a record by about $6 million. Okay, there's a lot to digest here. Help me understand, why are the players accepting deferrals when he had a similar deal with the New York Mets with all the money up front? Help me understand that.
Well, not knowing the particular negotiations, first of all, he may have wanted to play for the Dodgers and wants to win a World Series, and he felt this was the best way for him to get that. And so he's willing to make some sacrifices financially, comparing dollars for dollars.
Is the offset, though, you get a check for $64 million?
And that probably is why you saw the signing bonus like that, because it was something that, hey, we would pay you the same average per year, guaranteed money, but we're going to give you 60 of it today. Yes, there'll be some deferral, but net it'll be roughly the same. Listen, the Dodgers are operating this as they need a whole spreadsheet with their players. I mean, they're the only franchise that operates like that. And that's part of the problem with pro baseball, is that in Major League Baseball, we've got to put everybody on an even playing field. If we're going to make baseball like it is the NFL, where you have teams like Seattle, all different teams that aren't big money spenders. Jacksonville, Buffalo, so I think, it's great that the Dodgers can do this. I mean, their local TV money is bigger than several teams' money collectively. I mean, it's such an imbalance financially. Plus, they're willing to pay this tax threshold, which is nothing to them because they have this.
And the deferrals allow them to stay within some of the numbers. I guess we've talked about this a lot. Are we headed for a work stoppage? Absolutely.
Correct.
We are. The question is, are we trying to put a cap or really try to make sure the floor is met? Because there are 15 teams I saw that aren't reaching the salary floor if we were to present that in a new CBA. So I think that's as important as making sure we cap anybody.
I think it's actually more important because there are a lot of teams that the owners are looking at, hey, my franchise value is going up. I don't need to spend any more money. But I also think you have to make it more of an even playing field. And because the Dodgers and have their own, remember, all these baseball markets have their own local TV deals, their own regional TV deals. And they're at such a different level than Tampa Bay is. So you've got to make some parity financially, and then you also have to bring the floor up. It won't affect how much money these players make maximum-wise. It will actually create more money for players that aren't making this kind of money because teams are not spending it.
So you mentioned the TV deals. So Main Street is one of the groups that runs the FanDuel networks. They have 9 teams right now who are right now in between, not knowing what their TV deals are going to look like just weeks before spring training. So for those teams, that is absolute revenue that they're counting on that might not be there, where the Dodgers, they don't have to worry about it. They keep all their TV revenue, and it works out that way. I think the other problem we're running into, and I say problem, there maybe is a better word. Bo Bichette just got $42 million a year in a 3-year deal from the New York Mets. Those teams have so much money. Individual billionaire owners, better TV deals. There's not a world where Bo Bichette is supposed to be making $42 million. Good for him, good for his agent. You're worth what somebody's willing to pay you. But what it does, it throws everything out of whack, right? We're in Atlanta, we're already having the discussion about Ronald Acuña's future. He's got 3 years left. He's making $17 million a year. If he's healthy, that's a $50 or $60 million player, which means to 95% of the league, you're not in on the negotiations for Ronald Acuña, including his own team.
But remember, we talk about, no one's ever overpaid. Teams always complain, the market's this, yet at some point, sometimes they're the ones setting the market. So you can't have both sides of it. And, a player's worth what someone's willing to pay at that time, and Bo Bichette got that money. But again, he got that money in New York. You get that money in L.A. You're not getting that money necessarily in Atlanta. You're not getting that money in any of the Florida franchises, because those owners are billionaires too, but they're not going to spend that money because they don't have the TV revenue, they don't have the merchandise, all the stuff. They just don't have the market size.
Plus, they don't have the motivation to spend it.
Why would you?
If there's a new CBA that says, hey, everybody's got to spend 75 to 100 million minimum, all right, you got no choice. That's why I think being the NFL owner is the best.
Well, the NFL implemented that several years ago.
They did.
I mean, there was a cap in place, a soft cap, then it became more of a hard cap.
But they can't go past it. If you're Arthur Blank or an owner in the NFL, you're like, I wish I could spend more. I can't. League rules. Baseball, they can't live under that one.
But the way they do it in the NFL, which is unique, is an old archaic rule that we as agents want them to get out, is the funding rule. That when you guarantee somebody money in future years, an owner actually has to cut that check today, put it in the NFL escrow. So that's why teams shy away from a fully guaranteed contract. They intend to pay it, but they don't want to do it because in Major League Baseball, $40 million a year, every year you write $40 million. Well, if you did a 3-year, $120 million deal, the first year $40 million, you're paying the player. The other 80, you're writing a check for $80 million today into a fund. So teams shy away from that in the NFL. So again, not that Major League Baseball will ever do that, but there has to be some sort of floor that people spend. When NFL got into a minimum amount of spending, not just cap dollars, but real dollars, it elevated average per year. And they also have to put away where the Dodgers can continue to spend, but they have to share some of their TV revenue so it helps the smaller markets out.
All right, a couple of quick stories here. Saw a piece on Nick Saban. There's a documentary, 6-episode docuseries about Saban in production, working with ESPN. I always ask the question when we hear about these, who's producing it, who has last rights when it comes to editing and production. If it's Nick Saban, it's going to be an infomercial, right? And I don't know that there's much in the way of drama, but I would love to hear from assistant coaches. I would love to hear from people who have worked with him, both in his short time in the NFL with the Browns or with the Dolphins, and the same thing around his stops at LSU or Michigan State. So I always wonder who's going to be behind it before I know if it's going to be good.
Well, first of all, whoever's behind it doesn't mean it's not going to be good. Saban is not a coach. Saban is a CEO. He is going to have not a finger or two fingers. He's going to have both hands involved in this production. My gut tells me someone like Peyton Manning's company is going to produce this, and it'll be something that anyone has anything real bad to say about Coach Saban will be cut out of it. I mean, there'll be some stuff in there because he wants to make it real, but at the same time, he also wants to make it about him and the positive impact he's done as a coach from his college to pro back to college ranks. So he will definitely have a say. So he's not going to be part of something that doesn't benefit him first.
Okay, speaking of benefit you, this might be something you want to invest in. There's a group of 80 investors launching a new racket sport, and I think it's called TYPTI, T-Y-P-T-I, that blends tennis and pickleball. Tennis Channel founder Steve Bellamy is going to be the CEO. He has celebrity investors already on board like Drew Brees, Nick Kyrgios, J.J. Abrams, Bert Kreischer, and many more. We've talked about everybody's trying to come up with the next sport. What's the thing we can do? Here's an idea with some money and some dollars. Can they get some TV and some interest?
Listen, if you got the money, do what you want to do with it. I mean, listen, pickleball is becoming mainstream, and there's still no proof of concept that there's not money in it short term for the professionals, but money in it for the investors. Then you got padel, which is another thing. You need court space. You need things to be done. And I just, again, not knowing enough about this new sport, it sounds great. It sounds interesting. But for it to make money per se, to be determined. Yeah. But again, it also goes to what you talked about earlier, Matt, that all these networks, all these streaming channels are looking for content. Yep. So if you have ownership that has a name attached to it, it creates content.
Okay, one last story I want to pick your brain about. It was big news last week. Brooks Koepka is returning to the PGA Tour, which is great news for both the networks and for the PGA. He'll make his first PGA Tour stop in nearly 4 years at the Farmers Insurance Open, and I say that specifically. Unless you're in a major, there are a lot of casual golf fans who will tune in for the big ones, right? But will they watch the Farmers Insurance Open? No, but Brooks Koepka might be one of the few guys that does get you on a weekend back to a TV to watch something you otherwise wouldn't.
Yeah, well, first of all, Brooks Koepka has to make the weekend, right? I mean, that's the key to their success. Are you and I watching it Thursday and Friday afternoon because Koepka's in it? Absolutely not. So he actually has to do it. But what it does show you is star power drives golf, and it drives a lot of other sports as well. And so they're hoping that he plays what he's done in the past and that he's able to continue to bring eyes on the TV for non-majors. And that's the goal with all these things, whether it's Tiger Woods or Scottie Scheffler or whoever it may be. They want the bigger names vying for the title because that puts eyes on it. I know I'm guilty of it. Come Sunday, if there's a golf tournament on, and one of the guys that I like that's well known is in it, I'll watch it. Yeah. If it's a bunch of guys I've never heard of before, I'm not a big enough golf fan to put my eyes on it.
It's a great Sunday nap
I'll
experience.
go to the pillow fighting instead.
I like what you're doing. I don't want to know what's going on in Hadley's house. Thank you guys for enjoying the podcast, either listening or watching. Remember, you can subscribe wherever you get your favorite pods. Just search Deals and Deadlines. Again, you can watch us on our 680 The Fan YouTube channel. Thanks to Justin Burney. We'll talk to you next time on Deals and Deadlines.